feet underwater.
Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I want to catch you up on, let me just lay the foundation from the first episode about how his past caught up with him. I'm talking about Wayne, y'all. Yeah, if you listen to the first episode, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, I recommend that you go back and listen to the first episode of how his past caught up with him, part one. We're talking about Wayne and Bobby, and Wayne and Bobby were friends that had grown up in the neighborhood. But anyway, they wanted to get some money, and Wayne and Bobby did. They pulled a couple of capers, and Wayne used the money to try to build, well, not to try, but to build his, construction business. And Bobby went on and did things in the streets. And after years of doing that, Wayne is seeing success. Bobby in the streets is not seeing success. Bobby ends up asking Wayne for a favor later on, and something happens, and Wayne ends up killing Bobby at the meeting place where they were at. But when he does this, Bobby's daughter, she's around 2 or 3 years old, she's in the car, and there are no witnesses other than her to this horrible incident, but she's a child. She really can't really testify to anything at that time. So anyway, the state ends up charging him, Wayne, but he keeps getting put off year after year after year, and it's gotten put off so many years that now, Bobby's daughter is around 9 or 10 years old. She can understand what's going on way better. And they have offered Wayne 40 years in prison, you know what I'm saying, as a cop-out, and he's not taking it. And another thing is that by now, he's making a lot of money. He's a very wealthy man, very well respected in the neighborhood. He hasn't done anything in the streets in years. But this one thing that he did back in the day, this one thing that he did in the sense that killing Bobby, and I don't want to diminish that in any way, shape, or form, this is coming back to haunt him. And that is connected to what Bobby saw as, Wayne's owing him, at least in his mind, help when he needed it, because he knew how Wayne was able to build his empire. He knew that this empire had been built off of dirty money. And even though he never said that out loud, he always used that, in a way to where Wayne knew what he meant. And in this situation, Wayne didn't agree to help him, and he ended up killing him, but there's no witnesses or anything like that. But now we're faced with a situation where it's time to pay the piper. He doesn't want to take a plea agreement because he's not doing anything now. He was really defending himself, but nobody's there to testify to that on his behalf. The only witness is his daughter, right? Now look here. Let me take a sip of this here real quick, y'all. I'm drinking Pepsi too. Let me clarify that. When I say taking a sip, I had to have something to clear my throat. I'm still a little sick. But anyway, when she gets about 9 or 10 years old, she's going to be a witness at this trial because Wayne is not going to plead out. Now, what can a 9 or 10-year-old testify to when the incident happened when she was 2 or 3 years old? That's the question. That is the question. So Wayne's lawyers, they get all of the evidence that's going to be used. When you go on to trial or anything like that, you've been charged with something, they have this thing called a motion of discovery, right? And when you file this motion with the courts, you're asking the courts, the judge, to compel the district attorney's office to turn over all evidence that they have against your client, right? So they have to do this. They have to comply with it. And any other evidence that they get later on, they have to turn that over as well, right? Now, that's key. And if you don't understand what that means you've never been charged with a crime, and I respect that, but don't do it. You feel what I'm saying? But that's how cases go. they have to present and turn over all the evidence that they have against you so you can prepare your defense for that case, right? And when they turned over the evidence, they turned over the witness list, meaning who's going to be testifying, and they also turned over any physical evidence, weapons, pictures, fingerprints, anything like that, right? Now, you got to keep in mind, Wayne didn't flee the scene. He called the police. And he didn't say that he didn't shoot the man, but he said he shot the man in self-defense. Nobody was there to refute that. Nobody. But they didn't want to buy it because the DA had been investigating and heard all of these stories in the streets. And a lot of us have these connections to the streets, even after we've gone on with our lives. And a lot of DAs they don't want to let things like that go. And because Wayne was doing so well, he set his sights on him. And now he wanted to find out what was really going on. So he didn't drop the charges. He didn't move on. So here we go, trial day. It's time to go to trial. And the DA approaches the bench. He asked the judge, could he approach the bench? He said he had some late evidence that he had gathered that he wanted to introduce to the courts and turn over to the defense. So the judge called both lawyers, the DA and Wayne's lawyer, to the bench. And Wayne, for that matter. So when they get up to the bench, the DA said they have a recording of Wayne confessing to the crime. So Wayne looks at his lawyer and he tells his lawyer, I ain't confessed to no crime. He said, well, at the scene, he confessed. Let me make sure you understand what I'm saying, y'all. At the scene, he confessed to shooting, but he confessed to doing it in self-defense. So that's enough right there to say he was there and did it. But now the state, the DA is trying to say that the circumstances are a little different and they have this recording to prove it. So the judge says, I'm going to call a recess. I'm going to listen to this in chambers to determine if this is something that I'm going to allow, because the judge didn't want to introduce any evidence that could be prejudiced, prejudice against Wayne at this last moment. So he called a recess, went in his chambers, and he listened to the recording. And when he listened to the recording, he came back out and he said, I'm going to allow this to be admitted. And he asked the defense, he asked Wayne, the lawyer said, do you want to take some time to talk with your client, listen to this, and figure out if you're going to need a continuance or not? So he told the judge yes. So the judge called a recess, 15-minute recess. Wayne and his lawyer went in the back of the courtroom in a private office. In that private office, they played the tape. Nobody's in there but them two. And the lawyer's assistant. It was 3 people in there, them 3. So they're playing the tape. And the tape is of Wayne calling Bobby's daughter and telling her that he was sorry for what he had done. He's crying, sounds like he's drunk. And he's confessing that, he thought that Bobby was trying to use him again because he knew that Wayne had used money that they had gotten in a robbery when they were younger, years ago, to build his empire. And he did not want Wayne talking about that. So the DA's putting a spin on it as saying that this is why Wayne really killed Bobby. So the DA stops the tape and he looks at Wayne and he tells him, he said, this is going to be a problem because the DA gets to narrate his interpretation of this tape. He said, we can put our spin on it, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be up to the jury. What do you want to do? So Wayne leans back in the chair, and I want to paint a picture for you. Now, you got to keep in mind, Wayne It's not a street dude. No matter how he got his money to start his business, he's still not a street dude, y'all. He did a couple of things years ago, robbed some people, got a lot of money, and that was it. That was it. He really wasn't that type of dude. And now he was a grown man with a company, people that relied on him, depended on him, and he'd never seen the inside of a jail or a prison, even though he knew a lot of people that had. He knew Bobby and other people, you know what I'm saying, that he had grown up with. But he'd never been on that side of it. So in his mind, it's like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And that's typical for a lot of people. They say, you know, when they get confronted with that, they are so afraid of the environment and what comes with this environment that they panic. And I understand that. I did the same thing. So now Wayne's got a choice to make, y'all. He's got a choice to make. Do I go to trial, roll the dice, see what happens, and get put away for life if I get found guilty? Or do I take a plea? What do? His lawyer looked at him. He said, man, look, whatever decision you make, I'm riding with you. But you got to remember something. If you go to trial, a life sentence is 51 years before you're eligible for parole. If you take the plea, you do 40 years before you can get out. But with the plea, you're not able to appeal it. He said, but if you go to trial and we lose it, we can fight it on appeal. He said, it'll take some time, but you have the resources and we can do this. So now he's sitting there and real fear sits on him. I'm telling you, it sits all over. So he tells the DA, can you go get something smaller than the 40? Tell him to give me anything under 10 and I'll take it right now. Anything under 10 and I'll take it right now at 30%. He said, you do that, I'll take it. So the DA is outside in the hallway. So his lawyer goes out in the hallway and he talks to him. He said, look, come on now, let's make a deal. You know the circumstances here, but we need a way out. You're going to get your conviction. But he deserves a chance in life. He made some mistakes early in his life that he regrets today, but it shouldn't cost him the rest of his life because the person that he was dealing with was trying to manipulate him, use him. So the DA at first was resistant. He didn't want to do it. He's like, nah, no deal. But his lawyer kept talking to him, begging him, imploring him, please, don't do this to him. He's a good man. He's a good person. He's not that person that committed those robberies back in the day. Now, see, this DA was upset because Wayne was one of those individuals that made it. He had made it. And this DA didn't want other people to look at Wayne because the streets knew the story. And the DA didn't want other people to look at Wayne and look at him like he was somebody to look up to because he had made it really, truly off of dirty money. And that's how a lot of them are. It's not about what Wayne did. It's about how he got to where he is. But in the long run, Wayne's lawyer wore him down. And he agreed to give Wayne 8 years at 30% if he pleaded out. So he went back in there, Wayne's lawyer went back in there and he told Wayne, I got you 8 years at 30%. He said, but you got to get up and you got to admit to killing him and you got to tell the whole story as to why you did it, talking about the robberies that you committed back in the day. So Wayne said, is he going to try to charge me with those robberies? He was like, no, he's not going to charge you with those robberies, but people are going to know. And he said it could affect your business. Now Wayne started to worry about all of his employees, all the people that worked for him, all the people that looked at him but didn't know how he started. You feel what I'm saying? Because he didn't talk about that. And now his pride started to creep in just a little bit. And for a minute, he was like, I can't do it. And his lawyer told him, he gave him a dose of reality. He said, listen, man, people are still going to respect you for what you did. You made some mistakes, but you turned it into a positive. And he said, a lot of people wouldn't do that. He said, but now it's time to pay the piper. Your past is caught up with you. It's time to own it all. And let's get this behind us. He said, in 3 or 4 years, you'll make parole and get out. Because I know you're going to go in there and you're going to do what you're told to do. So the moment of truth, Wayne leaned back in the chair and he told him, he said, make the deal. So he went out there and told the DA they had a deal. It took about an hour for them to get the papers typed up. They went and told the judge that they had reached an agreement. And they were just waiting to get the papers done so that Wayne could sign them and then come into the courtroom. And if the judge accepted it, then everything would be fine. So about an hour or so later, Wayne got the paperwork. He read over it. His lawyer read over it. He signed it, went back into the courtroom, and the judge read everything that he's supposed to him, telling him, do you understand what you're doing? You understand by pleading guilty, you are waiving your right to appeal. He told him all of that, and Wayne agreed and he understood. And then Wayne was allowed to make his statement. And in making his statement, he said that he wanted to apologize to Bobby's daughter. He wanted to apologize to all the people that worked for him, all the people in the community that had looked up to him. He said, but what they didn't understand is that he was ashamed the whole time that he was running his business. He was ashamed for people to know what he had done to get the money to start his business. But he wasn't ashamed of all the things that he had accomplished in the meantime with his company. All the donations that he had made to people, helping people in the community, providing jobs for the community, doing all of those types of things. And what he regretted the most is that he took the life of a dear, dear friend of his because his friend couldn't let the past go. And he said that's what he regretted the most. And he was prepared to pay for what he had done to set that in motion that led to Bobby being killed. See, that's what we got to focus on. Yeah, we can do a lot of things in the streets and take that money and turn it into good and do this and do that, right? But when our past creeps up on us, own it. Own it so you can move past it because greater things are beyond it. So the DA wanted Wayne taken into custody immediately. But Wayne's lawyer asked the judge to give him some time before he would have to turn himself in. And this is a state case. They normally don't do this because they were not expecting to be taken into custody today. And he has a lot of things that he needs to do to get his company straight, to make sure his employees are going to be straight and all. And the judge understood that. So he gave him 2 weeks to get all of his affairs in order so that, the transition would be as smooth as possible because there was a lot of people that worked for him. So he did all of that. And after about 2 weeks, he turned himself in at the county jail. His wife drove him to the county jail to turn him in. And when he was in the front of the county jail, Bobby's daughter was down there. She was not down there to gloat. It wasn't a happy moment. She came down there because she wanted him to know that she understood. And she forgave him on the spot. And she hugged him and she told him that she was rooting for him. This is a child. And she was telling him she understood. And what she didn't realize is that Wayne, during those 2 weeks, Wayne had made arrangements for her to be taken care of the entire time that he was in prison and even after he got out financially. Because Bobby wasn't able to do that. He was going to make sure that at least financially, she was going to be taken care of. So he did all of those types of things. and he came into prison and he served his time and he got out and he went on with his life. And today he continues to run his company and it's even bigger and better. And people really respect this man because of the courage that he showed by going ahead and accepting responsibility for what he did. And he thanked the DA. He thanked him because the DA, by dropping it from 40 to 8 years, it allowed Wayne to be able to walk into that and accept it and own it. Because he said he didn't know if he would have been able to do that with that 40. He wanted to embrace it, but to be taken away for the rest of his life, he didn't know if he could do that. He would have fought that. Just wanted to drop that one on y'all, right? This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. And before I go, I want to make sure you understand something. Owning what you've done in the past is not going to hurt you as much as you think. It feels weird because, you think that you're going to lose something. But in the reality, you're going to be gaining everything. It's going to feel uncomfortable, though, but you're going to be gaining everything. Peace out.
I've been trying to breathe underwater.